Hey everybody, it's time for another Saturday shout out in the Thrive Tribe. And I'm very excited about today's guest. I think that you are the guest that I have known the longest. If I'm correct, because I think I've probably known you since I was about 45, I don't know. We little bird. Our parents were friends before we ever came along. And so yeah, I want to say I've known our guest for a long, long time. So without further ado, let me welcome Guy Noland. Welcome.
Yeah, I have a picture of us. Did you see that picture of us on Facebook of like you must have been about 4 or 5, and I don't know, I must have been about 2. And there's all of us. It's me, you, and Rob, and the Buchanans and everyone. That's
And
a
that
lot.
is a fashion show picture.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I look really unhappy in that picture.
Yeah, well, I didn't. I had a lollipop and
Yeah.
lederhosen, so I was all good. I was good to go.
We'll have to find that picture and post it in the comments so people can see what we're talking about. But yeah, I don't know what was going on with me, but I look a little sullen in that. And
Yeah.
I
Well, you were
was
a
trying to
friendly
be rude.
child. It was, yeah. You were
Well,
deep
tell us a
inside.
little bit about yourself, Guy.
About me, I obviously, we've known each other for a long time, and I don't know what to say other than I work in the entertainment business. I'm a freelance writer and producer, director, actor, comedian, professor. I have 2 master's degrees, and that's all about kind of pulling people out of their everyday humdrum existence and giving them escape for just a little bit, and putting a smile on people's faces when I can. And that's kind of where I am and what I do.
Nice. What are your master's degrees in?
Both of them, it's a long story, but I have 2 masters. I have an MA and an MFA, both in screenwriting.
Wow. All right.
Yeah, and a bachelor's in film and television production.
Nice. Well, I'm going to share with the Thrive Tribe that back a few years ago when I was still a principal, I invited Guy to come to my school and he talked to my kids. I always like to bring people with different kinds of professions in it. And he talked at that time a lot about doing stunt work, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, do you want to tell them anything about that before we move on?
Well, yeah, I brushed up against that for a little bit. I have there was a period of time that I worked as the entertainment technical manager for Universal Studios, and having a performance background, I also at the time got into stunt work up there at the Waterworld live action stunt show, and I had a contract with them for about 6 years that I worked with them. Doing stunts and doing the show, live action stunt show up at Waterworld. It was fun, great fun. A little old for that now, falling off of things and catching on fire and all that stuff. Yeah, kind of grow out of that. Although, to be fair, I still do have friends who are still up there doing it, and they love it. It's a great time. It's a great show. But it was great talking to your kids too, to be able to answer their questions and kind of encourage them, and that there are different paths that you can go down, and if you really want to, there's nothing stopping you from doing whatever you want in life. So it was nice to be able to talk to them.
And I appreciate that. And I think that in California, especially Southern California, where film industry is so big, I don't know why we don't promote it more in schools, because there's so many jobs. I have another friend who's a camera operator, and then there's just so many, whether not just in front of the camera, but so many different opportunities for work. And maybe we could train kids a little bit better to be able, or to even know that those fields exist, I guess.
No, it's true. And it's only been really recently that even the universities in the area have really started to hone in on that, which was very odd to me when I first started going to film schools in the area, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, looking for where I was going to go to school. I was really surprised at how very few of them really had intensive film programs for being in LA. Like back then there was maybe like USC, UCLA, and AFI were like the only schools in the LA area. And I'm going around to, these, CSUs and campuses and things, and looking at their film programs. And at the time were just really bad shape. And I'm thinking, seems like a give me. Like this is Hollywood. Lately, a lot of them have been coming back up, but it doesn't surprise me that even high schools are kind of behind on that track. Hopefully some of them will start coming up and start offering those kinds of programs. I know some of them have, but even some of the junior colleges have started to do it. Yeah.
And you're teaching some college, aren't you?
I'm not anymore. I was teaching, I taught at Cal State Northridge for a little while, and then at Santa Monica College, they now have a pretty decent film track. And I also taught for a little while over at Azusa Pacific over that side of the valley. Taught some film production or film business classes with them over there.
Nice. Well, it seems like you've done so many different things related to the entertainment industry. I'm curious when you knew that you wanted to do something creative, that you were not going to sit at a desk in a cubicle, that you needed to do something else. And if you were always directed that way, or if that path wavered to go, I'll try this office job, but nope, I'm back in.
Yeah, I think we've all done that, especially if you're in the creative field. You've all had the day job, and which just reinforces to us creatives that we can't have a day job. Like, we have to pay the bills, and so we go and we get a day job, to pay the bills, and we really quickly find out that we can't do day jobs. We're not built for it. Whatever it is in our psyche, we don't have the attention span or the patience to do that. We need constant change and creativity. But to go back to answer your question, I mean, as you know, my parents are very creative.
Mom's an artist.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Mom's an artist. Dad's a writer. And I think I was 6 years old. I don't know if you remember when they wrote a musical called Same Old Story. They wrote a part in for a 6-year-old kid, which I was at the time. And my mom came home and said, "Hey, we have a part for you," which had a solo. And the condensed version of the story is basically I got on stage in front of all of these people, and it was literally, I think it was at the Pasadena Civic Auditorium. There was thousands of people out there, and I forgot the words to the song, and I just sang whatever came out of my mouth. I just sang, and I'm sitting on stage and I'm thinking, oh, I'm in so much trouble. I just totally messed up the song. There's a whole choir behind us singing, the songsters, and I thought, oh, I just screwed this up, and I'm in so much trouble. And I'm walking off the stage. And my mother picked me up and hugged me and said, "That you did so good. You forgot the words, but nobody knew because you just kept going. You didn't look over at me. You didn't cry. You just kept going." She said that, and I thought, wow, this is it. This is where I need to be. Like, you can totally screw up, and as long as you fake your way through it, people are gonna, they're gonna praise you for it. So that was kind of the beginning of the road as a performer, and then. All growing up, I got involved in theaters and children's theaters, and then that led into directing. And then but I never really thought I was going to go into it because it was always, to me, it was this thing that I loved to do, but it was a pipe dream. Like, nobody makes a living doing this. Only the 1% can make a living doing this. And so I need to be more practical. And then, so I was going to be, I think in high school, I decided I was going to be a marine biologist because I love scuba diving and I love the ocean and surfing and all that stuff. So I was going to be a marine biologist, and then I found out that you need to be good at math to be a biologist. And I went, I don't think that's for me. But at the same time, I had gotten involved in the drama department at my high school. And my drama teacher pretty much kind of looked at me and said, "Is this something that you want to do?" And I'm like, nah, I mean, who am I to go and, be a movie star or whatever? Be an actor. And his response was, "Well, why not you? Somebody's got to do it. Why not you? Everybody else who's out there, pursuing their dreams, you've got just as much chance as they do of making it. So why not?" And I went home that day and told my dad, I said, "I want to be an actor." And he went, "Okay, if that's what you really want to do." That led into writing and directing and, and the story goes on and on and on. And, you know, I got into a performing arts school straight out of high school, accepted into a performing arts college. I went one day and thought, nah, I don't want to spend a lot of time getting a degree in acting. Maybe what would be better? And I thought, oh, film school, I'll go and do film school. And that kind of led down the road to, you know, writing and producing and directing. And, you know, that's kind of the whole story of how I got into it. And the rest is kind of history, I guess they'd say.
Yeah. I'm really fascinated by your latest project, The Viral Army. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so VIRAL stands for, it's an acronym for Victims of Incest, Rape, and Abuse Liberation. And it's a web series that I wrote, and I took out, and I was trying to sell it. I'm kind of developing a few different projects that I've written with a few different people, and I've got some writing partners on different projects that I'm working with, and that we're pitching to various production houses. But this one was one that was kind of my own project. And it came about, my wife is very much an advocate for gender equity and equal rights for women. And so when the whole Brock Turner thing happened, when he got off on, you know, got off without being arrested or jail time for being caught red-handed raping a girl in an alley, we started talking, and I came up with this idea of, you know, what if we had what if there was a show or a story or a film about people taking the law into their own hands, you know, women taking their own rights into their own hands. And that's why I came up with this idea for this web series about this woman who is she's a rape crisis counselor, and she sees enough wrongs that she has finally had enough, and she decides to take the law into her own hands. And she she becomes a vigilante basically for women, and she takes on some people and inadvertently causes this movement to happen called VIRAL, which is, you know, women around the world who come together around this viral video and start this movement of taking women's rights back from the rapists and the abusers in the world. So right now we're just kind of in our beginning stages. We just shot our pilot episode. I chopped it around to a few places, and you know, unfortunately, like, it's kind of low-hanging fruit. So now there's some other movies and things that are starting to come along like this. And I wrote this about two years back. And so we finally just said, you know what, we got to shoot it. We got to get some money together. So we put together a crowdfunding campaign, and we got enough money together to shoot the pilot episode. And so I got that now, and I'm working on editing that now. And I'm really happy with how it's going. And the idea is also that we're going to, you know, use that if, you know, we get some traction to kind of connect victims to places where they can get help, you know, and if there are women out there who are needing help or needing counseling or needing something, that the landing place for this video or this series is going to have those connections and going to have those buttons that they can press, and, hey, this is where I need to get help, or this is information that I need, and finding out really interesting things about that people don't normally know, just information about if you've been raped or if you've been abused, and what you should do and the actions you should take even immediately after. I think it's really important stuff for people to know, not just women either, men too. Men are victims just as, you know, not as much as women, but are victims of this kind of stuff as well. So just a lot of stuff that I think, you know, would be really useful if we can get that going and getting that out to people.
I think it's fascinating. I want to tie it to an activity that I've taught teachers to do with kids, and actually I teach adults to do this too, in connecting with their purpose. A lot of times when we think of our passion, we think about things we love. You know, I love to do this, or I love to do that. But there's another technique called Heartbreak Mapping, where you think of all the things that break your heart, and that is really what you're passionate about too. It's not just the things that you love, but it's the things that devastate you. And so, you know, you mentioned that this was really a big passion of your wife's. I'm curious if there's another heartbreak that someday might become another project. If there's something that you would want to shed light on, or that you know, would want to stand up against, or I don't know.
Well, for me, my big passion is recovery, and I'm 15 years sober myself, and again, knowing my background and where we come from, comes from a big an organization that really champions recovery, and so it took me a while to get around to that, figuring out that there was something that was missing in my life, and that I needed to get a hold of, because of that. Because not me, that couldn't happen to me. I couldn't be an alcoholic because I grew up in a family. My grandfather was in charge of an ARC, and up in Lytton. And those who don't know what an ARC is, it's Adult Rehabilitation Program. It's a drug and alcohol rehab. So that can't happen to me. That can't be me, right? That's those people. That's not me. And one of the greatest things that ever happened was, walking into an AA meeting for the first time and going through the process and eventually realizing, well, that is me. I am one of them. It's not them and us. It's us. It's all us. And they're me and I'm them. And, they're my people. This is my tribe. And so I really have dedicated, my passion, my heart passion has always been working with, men in recovery, who are new and coming in, because I remember like it was yesterday what it was like to walk into that meeting the first time and not know what's going on, and not really even prepared to admit that I had a problem where I needed help at the time, and how I walked through that. And, the guys who had walked through that minefield of recovery before me and showing me the path that they walked, and how then it becomes my responsibility to go through the steps and to walk down that same path, and then to show people who are coming up behind me where to step to avoid those mines, in that minefield. So that's kind of really become a big passion of mine. And so I still, to this day, at least once a week will go, to a meeting where I work with newcomers and new guys in recovery. And I still sponsor, I still typically have, at least a couple sponsees that I work with at any given time.
I love it. So in thinking of well-being, obviously, when you're stressed, you have to have a really good go-to. So what are your, when you're feeling a little anxious or stressed, or you just need to relax, what are some of the well-being things that you do? What makes you feel good?
For me, it's meditation, but meditation really takes different forms. For me, it's doing things physically, is where I get into my meditation. I'm very active, mountain biking and mixed martial arts I do. And people think like, how could you be meditating while you're fighting somebody? And it's actually, it's kind of hard to explain, but it really is this kind of motion of meditation, where you kind of just fall into this zone, and because you're just not thinking about anything else, right? You're not thinking about the world. You're not thinking about the problems, or gosh, is that production house going to call me back? And are we going to get green lit on this? Or when am I going to hear from them? And when are we going to, you're not thinking about anything. You're just thinking about that guy in front of you who's trying to choke you out. I mean, like it's a form of meditation, Then there's other forms of meditation physically that I'll do. Like I'm an avid archer. I'll go to the archery range, and it's just that meditative motion, just repetitive motion of just trying to put, an arrow on the target, and just not thinking about anything else, and clearing your mind out. And sometimes I'll just stop, and I'll stand, in the middle of the range, because there's usually not anybody there when I go. And I'll just think, I'll just kind of fall into this meditation. Happens the same with mountain biking or anything else. It's just getting away to where I can just get into myself and into my own head, and just clear my thoughts and just work through things, or going for a run even. And that's what I always tell people too, like my students that, experience writer's block. Just go for a run. Just go somewhere where you have no distractions. I'll do that. I'll get halfway in the middle of my run and I'll go, boom. Oh, it hits me like that's the solution. That was what I was trying to find. But that happens with me with any kind of that kind of movement meditation, is typically what I will do.
Well, and there's, so I think people think that meditation is all about sitting crisscross applesauce,
Right.
burning some incense and, breathing. And mindfulness really just means paying attention on purpose in the present moment. So whether that's doing archery or running or sitting crisscross applesauce, it doesn't matter, but it's the art of paying attention to the present, not ruminating about whether these people are going to call or worrying, about anything like that. So I love that. In fact, that you're inspiring me. I'll try and find some articles. I remember I've read a couple like on mindful cycling, and I'll put those in the comments for people to see.
Yeah, it's great because I love it. I mean, I'll put, earbuds in and I'll be listening to, a podcast or something, but I'll find that, halfway into it, I'm really not listening to the podcast. I'm working through stuff in my own head, and I'll go and all of a sudden I'll come out of it and go, I totally missed what they were saying for the last 20 minutes because I was like in this meditative state where I was just, concentrating on the road and what was going on through my head,
Who would you say is one of the most influential people in your lives? And there may be, I'm sure you have several people, but that's maybe most impacted who you are today.
Well, I have to go with there's, there was my drama teacher from high school that I mentioned earlier, just kicking me in that direction was a huge thing. I'm still in touch with him. My wife and I will still have dinner with him and his wife every now and then. I had another drama teacher, Alex Urban, who was very influential in creatively and how to approach creative situations and dealing with groups of people, and particularly children. I was executive director of his children's theater for a number of years, and he was quite the master at that. But if I really had to go like in the long term of people who really influenced me, I've obviously got to go with my parents, who had a wonderful influence on me in my life, in doing just the best they knew how to raise, two sons that, weren't going to listen very often and who were very, opinionated and difficult. And then of course my wife. My wife has been amazing, an amazing influence. I mean, I often marvel at just how much I've changed since I've known her. Just because, I've told her this before too, I've been, in sobriety for 15 years and working hard on being a better person. And I've been with my wife for 4 years. And just in that 4 years, the amount that I've grown as a human being, just because she's that kind of person who inspires me to be good, to be the best person I can be, right? And this is something that I pass on to sponsees now too, is that, look, the key is not, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be a little bit better than you were yesterday. And you're not competing against other people. You're not for anything in life, right? You don't have to compete against other people, in your career or in your business or in, your relationships or anything. And what they have is what they have. The person that you have to compete against is just who you were yesterday. That's it. And you just have to be better than you were yesterday. And that's what she inspires me to be. She inspires me to be, she was the one who I would go, walk out of a restaurant and go, oh, they undercharged me by $2. Oh, wow, look at that. I got $2 bonus. And she's like, no, we got to go back and pay that. And I'm like, but it's McDonald's. They don't need my $2. You know what I mean? And she's like, no, that's not who we are. We go back and repay them that $2 because that's the right thing to do. And so that kind of thing, you start hitting those little things over and over, and it just builds you up a little bit more and a little bit more, and builds your self-esteem and your self-worth a little bit more until you get to the point where you're like, I don't want to do anything. I only want to do what's right all the time, because that makes me a better person, and that makes me a person that I want to be involved with. You know what I mean?
I love that. So this is just a little kind of fun question. So I don't think this has happened to you yet, but Jimmy Fallon asked you to be on a show, and so you're coming out. What is your intro song as they introduce you? What is the band playing?
Oh gosh. Who let the dogs out? I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. I don't know. I mean, like the first thing that came into my head was "We Are the Champions," but that seems really pretentious. Like I don't.
Well, you're on Jimmy Fallon. You're coming out. You think you can be a little pretentious. I don't know.
Yeah, see, that was the first thing that popped in my head, but I'm like, yeah, that's a little pretentious. I don't know about that.
Don't edit. All right, so I'm going to ask you another big question, and don't overthink. Just say the first thing that pops into your head. If you could teach the world just one thing, and granted the world needs to know many, many things, but one lesson from Guy Noland, what would it be?
That the root of all evil is self. And that if we could all learn to be a little bit less selfish and more selfless, I think the world would be a much better place. And everything that causes hurt or pain or bad feelings or anger, it all stems from somebody being selfish in some way. And if we could just get rid of that, I think the world would be 100% better. Unfortunately, human beings are programmed to be selfish and to survive, right? And what do we have to do to survive is we got to think about ourselves. And I mean, we were talking about before this came on is about, losing your job, and, and I lost my job and, years ago. And when it all boiled down to it was, at the end of the day, when you work for somebody else, they're not really going to have your best interest, at heart. They're going to have their own best interest at it. And no matter how moral or fair that business owner is, or that landlord is, or whoever is, doesn't matter. They're always when everything gets pushed aside, what's left is what is their own self-interest. And that's why for me, working for myself and owning my own house and not leasing a car, but owning my own car and having all these things that are mine that nobody else can control, and I don't have to worry about their own self-interest and other people's selfish behaviors, is the only way that I can keep sane. So that would be a long answer to a short question is, push the selfishness now and think down and think about others, first. Like the Christ message was, others first, yourself last. There was a good reason, I think, for that message was because that's the whole problem with our society and our world, as far as I'm concerned.
Hashtag work in progress. That's
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now's the time where you get to ask me a question. If you have a question for me, and I will do my best to answer.
I've been waiting for this moment my whole life, Joelle.
I'm afraid.
What to ask? How's married life?
How's married life? Married life is great. I got married on 12/12/12 at 12/12 because that seemed kind of cool. And we love to travel. We haven't been doing that as much lately, but we love to travel. We love to play trivia. We are in a league, actually, of bar trivia. We like to use our brains together, but no, it's good. It's good.
Nice. And what was your favorite place to travel?
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna say Florence, I think.
Ooh, good one.
It was good. Florence was good. We liked Spain too, but I don't know if there was something magical, I think, about Florence that I liked.
We liked Florence too. But we reversed it. Our favorite was Spain.
Oh, see, yeah, I liked the whole little afternoon, kind of having a little coffee, and yeah, it was nice. So.
Well, that was the problem, is that it took us a while to get used to that. See, we actually went on our honeymoon, and I just wanted to run with the bulls. That's all I did.
That does not surprise me at all.
So once I got to run with the bulls, then I was like, all right, everything else is gravy from here on out. But it took us a while to get used to that siesta thing. And then, like we walk in at 8:30, at night we go to a restaurant and they're not open yet. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, it's too early to eat. Because everyone eats at like 10 p.m. there, and they're laughing at us like, what are you doing here? Like, this is not, it's like way too early to eat.
So you really did run with the bulls?
Yeah.
And did you get injured at all, or were you good?
No. No, I think most people get injured because they're up all night and they're still drunk in the morning, and they feel that false bravado, and which causes your judgment, as we know, when you drink, is the first thing to go. And so there was a couple, because it's 7 days and they run every day for 7 days in the morning. And so in the beginning of the week, I think I ran on the last day. In the beginning of the week, there was a few tourists who got hurt pretty bad. But again, from what I read, they had been out drinking all night, and in the morning, went to run with the bulls is probably not the best idea. I was obviously stone sober, and very aware of what was going on around me, and asking people that I'm standing next to, like, have you run before? All right, what's your advice? So I got a lot of advice from other people who had run before, who were there in the crowd, and where to stand, and at what point. But my big thing was, I want to run with the bulls. Like, I don't want to be the guy who takes off and never sees a bull, and starts running. So I'm like, I'm not going to start running until I see a bull. And so saw the first one, and then I just started going with them, and all the way into the arena. And it was a bucket list. It was a bucket list thing. So
I love it. You're an adventurer. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. And I'll be putting some links to the stuff that we talked about in the comments. For the rest of you, I want to know your story. We all need to hear each other's story, because when we hear each other's stories, we learn, we grow, empathy happens. It's all a beautiful thing. So I'm going to hunt you down, or you could just save me a trip and just message me and say, hey, I'll be interviewed on the Fair Track. Have a great rest of your Saturday. Peace out.